Of all of David Lynch's 9 feature films, The Straight Story is the most obvious outlier of the bunch. With a G rating and a Disney distribution, it's clear that this movie isn't Lynch's run-of-the-mill, sex-filled mind trip. With that being said, I'm happy to announce that The Straight Story is still very much a David Lynch film. It's clear that he learned the importance of Final Cut after his adaptation of Dune, and it pays off, especially with this movie being the only one in his filmography that he didn't write himself. I say that this movie is still very Lynchian because of its oddball performances, its portrayal of American life, and its characters, many of whom are still grappling with past and present traumas. Let me explain. In the simplest terms, The Straight Story is about a man who drives his lawnmower hundreds of miles to visit his ailing brother. A much more straightforward plot than a Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway, no doubt, but behind the veil of simplicity, Lynch slowly crafts a delicate and thematically potent film that quietly evolves into something beautiful. Often just through a few lines of dialogue, we learn so much about our characters and the problems they're silently going through. Screenwriter Mary Sweeney effortlessly drops in these seemingly simple moments about family, grief, or getting older that come off as so genuine and heartfelt. What will start as just another scene of our protagonist Alvin meeting a stranger and sparking conversation will develop into a poignant lesson in empathy before your eyes. These payoffs will sneak up on you, whether it be a tied bundle of sticks illustrating the strength of a family, or the cutaway to Alvin and a fellow veteran sitting in the silence of a nearly empty bar, seemingly as lonely as they were after returning from the war. At the beginning of the film, we know next to nothing about our characters, mainly Alvin and his daughter Rose. Their monotonous Midwestern lifestyle might lead us to believe that they are uninteresting, but as the plot progresses, we learn that the opposite is true. This movie excels at showing you something and not revealing its significance until later into the runtime. My favorite example of this is when we see Rose looking out the window as a young boy chases after his ball. What seems like just an insignificant moment that could just pass as one of Lynch's trademark surrealist dreams isn't given its prominence until we learn more about the story of her own children. Suddenly, the pain and longing in her eyes make sense. Growing up in Montana, David Lynch has a good grasp on American culture and the Americana aesthetics. Looking at his other films, the picturesque white picket fences during the opening of Blue Velvet, or Diane's glamorous and idealized image of Hollywood in Mulholland Drive, both glorify the United States as a charming land of opportunity, just to eventually tear down the facade and reveal a seedy underbelly of shady characters and sinister forces. The Straight Story defies this formula. While using the flat, empty plains of Middle America as a backdrop, the film explores the good nature of people, not the bad. Instead of greed, jealousy, and anger, we see a more optimistic and sentimental Lynch, and I love that. Whether we'll see another David Lynch film again, let alone a David Lynch film reminiscent of The Straight Story, is still unknown, but I'm grateful we were able to experience a family-friendly Lynch at least once. In a lot of ways, I think The Straight Story enriches the depth of his filmography more than any other one of his efforts, proving that he could exist outside of the lane he made for himself. So, is The Straight Story really David Lynch's Outlier? Probably, but I see it more as the emotional flip side of an auteur. What do you think?
So people are going to say this is not a David Lynch movie. Now, do you resent people saying this is not a typical David Lynch movie?
Well, it's a hair absurd because I made the movie, so it has to be a David Lynch movie, and it's every one of us has so many different sides, so many different things swimming inside, but you have to fall in love with the story to direct it. And I didn't think I was going to fall in love with this script, but I did.